This is Resonance, a podcast for leaders that unpacks the power of song, silence, and strategy.
We believe that great leadership begins with deep listening, not just to others, but to the still small voice within.
It's not just about being a successful leader, it's about being soulfully aligned as well.
In a world moving fast, Resonance invites you to pause and reconnect with purpose, people, and possibility.
We'll dive into some cool stories, celebrate with friends, and dig deep into the music too. 'Cause song has a way of saying what words cannot alone.
So whether you're leading a business, a team, or just trying to lead your own life with more meaning, this is Resonance.
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 Hey folks, I'm Steve Azar. Welcome to Resonance. Excited to have my team, Randy Harrington, Mike the Monk Guy Farrell, as always, and looking forward to this exciting news about today's episode. It was something that Randy, just out on a consulting week, came back with some interesting information that we wanted to touch on, which led to a few other topics. And I think I'm going to turn it over to Randy right now, and you can take it from here.
Right on. First of all, good to see you, Steve. I know you've been busy doing gigs. And Mike, great to see you as well. You guys are going to be together up in South Dakota here very shortly.
Yeah.
And
That's
going to be a pretty exciting performance. I'm sad I can't be there, but I'm going to be on the road in another location. And that actually provokes a little bit of the conversation we're having today. When I got on our podcast today, the first thing I did was say nothing. As I got into the room with Mike and Steve, they were already talking because I was typically a little bit late. And so the last thing I wanted to do was sort of barge into the room and say, hey, what's going on? I wanted to hear what they were talking about and then find a way to get into the conversation. And that's a little bit about what we're talking about today. Over the last couple of weeks, I've been doing a bunch of consulting work. And what I discovered, or what was reinforced to me, was that in situations where things are really working and people are getting along and they're doing generative thinking and there's all kinds of good stuff coming out of it, what I see is people waiting to say what they're going to say until it fits in the context of the conversation of the larger group. So it's like the jump rope game. They're sort of waiting to get into that jump rope game so that they can make it go. And the flip side was what really struck me. And that is in situations that didn't go so well, where there was more turmoil and frustration and confusion and occasionally a little bit of even anger. It was when somebody walked into the situation without assessing what was going on. They didn't pay any attention to the conversation that was already happening there. They just wanted to sit down. And in one case in particular, just kind of puke up whatever it was that they had been practicing in their head. You could tell for the commute, however long it took them to get there. This was something they wanted to say, and they wanted to get it out pretty much right away. And what it did was skew the entire conversation for an entire long period of time in a way that made it very difficult to recover it. And so that's what we're talking about, the lack of situational awareness. And I will suggest that the world, if you walk through the world, what do we see? Nobody's paying attention to anything. Except their heads in it, they're stuck in it. And I'm guilty as charged. I think we all are. But the premise of this conversation is, what if we switched on? What if we were awake? What if we were a little bit more situationally aware? That's the broad topic. Now, Steve, I know you have been through it in the music business, and there's a good chance that you've met people with egos, I'm going to guess, in the performing business. Just a thought, Mike. I'm thinking he might have.
Right.
Yeah. So does this idea ring any bells with you? Have you been in an experience where you watched things go sideways because somebody wasn't paying attention, didn't want to pay attention?
First of all, ever since my kids were as small as they could be, if I don't text them this one out of every 2 texts, one every 3 texts in their entire life, HOAS, head on a swivel. Always pay attention to your surrounding, sports.
Head on a swivel.
Yeah.
Head on a swivel. Love it.
Military phrase.
Yeah. I only had to tell my middle son, one time after he didn't have his head on a swivel when he was trying to make a tackle, he didn't see the blind side coming and it knocked him out. It knocked him out. And I said, when we finally got him to, I said, do I need to say head on a swivel? So I saw it coming. How come you didn't see it coming? He didn't want to hear that at the time, but
he's finally waking up from the smelling salts, right?
Yeah. It took a little bit of everything.
Happy little faces right there.
was a scary hit, trust me. But with that said, I'm a believer in that, and I have to sometimes remind myself. But these days, especially with these things in our hands, right? We're not paying attention. I was walking through the Atlanta airport last week, and I was wrong, and I caught myself looking down, and an airline attendant for Delta said, "Get off your phone." Like I must have gotten in her way, and I said, "I'm sorry. You're right. I didn't." She was right. She was a little bit harsh and rude to me. I needed a hug afterwards, but I couldn't be a smart aleck to her because she was 100% right. And I'm usually not doing that, walking in the middle. I was trying to find my gate and I couldn't find,
Yeah.
everybody, excuse or not, I should have gotten into a corner and looked rather than walking through the middle of it all. And so it happens, it happens, it happens. But,
But that says something about her too, right? I mean, she's having a bad day is what that tells me too.
she let me have it. It wasn't like, hey, there's a nicer
Yeah.
way. She went all in and
Get off your phone. Yeah.
she had me with a butter knife like 6 times. But she was correct. So I didn't I think that in my situation in the music business, every once in a while you're gonna run into everybody's got an ego, but a lot of the egos are truly in check and they're respectful for everybody else's ego. But I did run into one particular man in the business that so many of us did. And obviously, a lot of the reason why I started my own record label. And you couldn't go to him no matter what. So when we started having hits, he would say, "Hey, by the way, let me know when you're in a town and you're visiting and make sure if y'all got if the records aren't in the stores, I want to know." Well, he didn't want to know because he didn't realize we had come from playing live all those years and all we needed to do is have some hits. And then we had everybody that was there before for us and now a whole new, you call it just a treasure
Audience. Yeah.
of new
Sure.
market, new venues. So we weren't in the Southeast and Southwest anymore. The whole, the United States and beyond became our stage. So we were in all these places and he had fired the head of distribution before that. I felt like, and maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like they had just come off of "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?" And I think I believe
Huge.
he wanted the credit. So he got rid of the best distribution guy there was, who actually was hired by the Coen brothers right after because they realized how many sales they had, which was way in the millions, right? And so then I run into a sort of a guy that came in to be the distribution guy that wasn't prepared. And I was right. So Walmart did not sell my records for the first 2 weeks. Walmart sold more records than all the other what do you call brick and mortars combined. And so can you imagine losing that business for the first 2 weeks? And we were telling him they weren't in there, but he just didn't want to hear it. And he didn't want to hear it. He said, "If you tell me this again, I'm gonna drop you from the label." So he went through all of these things rather than doing what he said, "Let me know." He didn't want to know because he didn't know we were going to be working that much and out there in the public that much that fast after the first hit. So, and I dealt with that. This was the beginning of a lot of mess. Coincidentally, I ended up on an airplane with him going to Mark Bryan and Denny Hamlin's charity event, Mark from Hootie and the Blowfish, and Denny's big NASCAR driver up in Charleston on Daniel Island. I'm talking to somebody because I may have been Kevin James, Here Comes the Boom or Mall Cop 2.
Oh.
And I was on the phone talking to my agent and all about some of the placements and all this and the gigs. And this guy is sitting next to me and he's listening to me. And it's him. And I haven't seen him in years. And he goes, hey, it's me. I don't want to say who it is. And he said, "It's me." And I said, "Huh?" And he goes, I really screwed you over. I really messed you over." And, but which the forgiveness was, he wanted to give me his number and all that. And I took his number and then I forgot no, I mean, I'm fine. My prayers at times are geared toward him for me to forgive him. And cause he was that way to a lot of male acts. Toby Key, the list goes on and on. Toby did a whole lot about it. He went and had big success with DreamWorks and then ended up back on the label again because they were bought out by Universal. So it was crazy watching all this stuff happen. But long story short, egos are sometimes impossible to win. No matter if you're right or wrong, sometimes you just can't say what the truth is. And the truth would have helped everything, which would have helped make more sales, would have helped connect some dots with all of that.
Yeah.
And he just didn't want to know. And that was part of the struggle.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I've worked with a lot of, CEOs and entrepreneurs and those types of folks, and I know you have too, Randy. And it's amazing how many times they'll come to you and say, well, I really want to know what's going on. But when you really tell them what's going on, they really don't want to know what's going on. And they really are, they look at it and say, yeah, well, thanks. And, see you later.
Here's what I got to say. They were the ones that gave me the opportunity that I needed. So I'm grateful for that. Even though no matter what we did right, we'd score a touchdown and they wouldn't give us the points on the board, is the best way I can explain it. Because we were scoring a lot. And I feel like there was enough of it where I go, well, maybe this is all I deserve. And now I got to take what they gave me and I got to go continue to make a career out of it. So instead of laying in bed, which I did do for a week one time, then I got up and said, it's time to take control of my career. And I was just gonna have to be
This
one
is
of
an
the
important point. I mean, what you're saying is that these communication dynamics that happen when somebody is just not paying any attention to you, they're ignoring your existence fundamentally, and also truth ends up meaning nothing. I mean, it disables you at some level as a human. And so there you are, you're trying to do your thing, and now all of a sudden you're feeling you're carrying around this weight of self-doubt, and that turned a little bit into depression there a little bit. I mean, if you're in bed for a week, I mean, that's a sign. Happily, you were able to pull yourself out of it. That'd be another show to talk about. But
yeah.
but the
I'll have
point
to have
here,
I'll have to have a really long couch and some complete bedding. You're gonna have to cover myself up, and maybe I'll people.
yeah, there.
It's gonna bring back. No, it's
This is how we. I mean, this hurts us. This is not
yeah.
just something that it's a good
Right.
idea to do this.
Can I back up a little bit to tell you why I ended up in bed?
Sure.
Seriously. So the head of A&R that signed me, he got rid of him, and he was still a legend. And then he brought in a new guy who my first meeting with in Nashville 10 years before, I walked in and he said, I don't care what you look like. I don't care what you sound like. I got a family and I don't have time for you. And that was my meeting. So when he became the head of A&R, I ignored him, just ignored him because we were on the road. He shows up in New Orleans and he's on my bus. And he goes, I'm either going to drop you or you're going to tell me why you're not talking to me. And I told him about why. And I go, don't you remember? He goes, Steve, I don't remember that. And I'm sorry. I swear I don't remember. And so he watches us play the show at the House of Blues and we're done. He walked on the bus. He looks at me. He goes, I worked with Mark Knopfler and and then Chet Atkins, he was my mentor and I worked with these guys for years. You remind me of them. You've been doing this your whole life. You're a real artist. And He goes, I want you to start sending me the songs that you're making in your house. Cause I heard that you've been producing a lot of this stuff. Indianola record, by the way, this is the coming.
There you
So
go.
he becomes a big mentor. He got so excited. We became such good friends. He's been on the radio show years later. I fell in love with him. He was so good. And he was very honest with me. Steve, that's not the one you need right now. That's not the one. Okay, that's a keeper. Now, and he would be so opinionated in a positive way. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, guess what happens? We're about to go. Guess what happens? He gets let go. So
Oh.
here comes my next A&R guy, a guy that's from Mississippi that would never, ever meet with me. So this is, and now I'm really going like, what the heck? So he meets with me and he doesn't take the time to listen to my music. So what they do is, and funny, Doing It Right was on it. I had made all these demos at the house, the Indianola session, right? Randy, that you love so much. And I played them for him. And I said, I've been doing all this upstairs and this and that. So he doesn't, I find out he really doesn't listen. And he's talking to other songwriters. I'd already written or co-written everything I always did. I did it myself. And so he makes me cut 2 outside songs. By the way, those songs would become big hits on other artists, but they didn't sound good on me. I couldn't pull it off. It wasn't real. So the promotion staff listened to 5 songs that he re-recorded of mine, 2 new ones, 3 that he re-recorded of mine. And they all picked my 3 songs. And they said the other 2 doesn't seem like that's Azar. And so he goes, okay, I'm coming to your house. He comes to my house and he listens to everything I'm doing. He goes, why am I not letting you just do it? You've got this. I'm going to sit over the top and I'm just going to oversee it, but you're producing your own records. And I'm sorry that I didn't listen. And this is great. And guess what happens a week later?
He gets fired.
He gets fired. So he went back and told the main guy, he went back and told him, let him do his thing. He's got it. He's figured himself out. And I just want to oversee it. And I wasn't the only reason, but so the guy wasn't never going to let me out. He was never going to let me get to the thing. And we had just come off of being named the best act on the new Faces show, which is the top 5 acts of the year. And we got all of that. And he goes, you don't know what you just did for yourself and this and that. But then he kept shelving me. So that's when I decided to leave. So, and then that's when Seeger came and throat surgery, then Seeger, and all the good opportunities started to happen on our own. And that was better. And I just fell in love with it. I got to leave the label on my own terms. And he kept going, why would you ever leave here? And I said, well, you're not doing anything with me, so what's the question here? You've already set me on the bench after hits for 2 years. What am I supposed to do?
But this is what happens when there's a big old rock in your shoe and you can't move. And so this simple communication behavior of not actually listening and even feigning listening and faking the whole thing. That's the other problem.
Yeah.
It's devastating. It just, it hurts.
You know,
well, I was asked, guys, Mike, I was never going to get past where we were, I realized. And at some point, you just got to face reality and go, this isn't going to get any better no matter what I do. So, I mean, even one of the songs that they said that nobody would ever record this song. It was called Big Blue Sky. And we thought it was going to be the first single off the new album. Reba is walking down the hall and she hears it and she goes, can I have a copy of that? She ends up putting it on a video for a trip to Yosemite with her family. And I find out she's recording it on this Love Revival album for Hallmark. And I call her to thank her and she calls me back and she goes, I want to tell you how this happened. Well, of course, what happens when she has it on a record? Steve, why didn't you ever play us this? And I'm going, well, I played it for you. Y'all had it and she heard it walking down the hall, but why would I even go into the detail? So this is what you went through. And it was like, it could drive you mad or you could just laugh it off and go, hey, I just got a Reba cut. And I made some money. So thank you guys for playing it in the hall without, you're all without knowing you did me a favor. So
Steve, you made an interesting comment, opinionated in a positive way.
Yeah.
And I was with a client a couple of days ago and they were talking about, they do a Monday morning meeting with their leadership team. And the president of the company gets up and spews all over them and talks about all the things that are bad and what's not working and how you need to fix it and all these kinds of things. And he said, everybody's kind of checked out. They don't really seem like they want to be there. And I said to him, gee, I wonder why. And he says, yeah, I don't know. I said, you think maybe it's because everything that you're talking about is negative? And he thought for a minute and I said, let me reframe this. I said, how about if you start your meeting off, number one, celebrating what went right, and not only what went right on the job, but what's going right in their lives, quick celebration. Then I said, rather than you telling them the problems, why don't you tell them what happened and ask them for the solution?
Beautiful.
And, that idea, and you're turning a negative to a positive. I love that comment, opinionated in a positive way, because again, you're talking about this idea that says, let's turn these interactions, these communications from a negative standpoint to a positive standpoint. And you nailed it on that, Steve.
That kind of feedback, when somebody criticizes you, quote unquote, gives you a critique of something, but they're doing it because they want the product to be better. They know they're doing it because they're seeing something you didn't. It's not about, oh, you're a bad person. But when you get that feedback, it's just so powerful and rejuvenating. It's like, and then that person becomes a trusted source of feedback that you can go back to again and again and again. And those people are rare and beautiful. And if you have them in your life, go today and thank them. And just,
and I told this guy, I said, stop talking down to them and start talking with them. And I said, that's a huge distinction,
But what the beautiful part is, you do understand the distinction of the people that you want to be around that are that positive energy that can criticize, but yet make you realize that they're criticizing you with all the love and support in the world rather than putting you down. And those are the ones that help you get to the next step.
Exactly.
And,
absolutely.
those are the beautiful ones. And guess what? There was a vast number of those verses, but it's amazing how powerful and potent one bad apple, right? That's wrong. Spoil the whole bunch. Well, yes, it does. It can spoil a whole bunch for a long time if that bad apple is in a position to be affecting everything else. You
Well,
know,
we've all been in the workplace, and you're sitting there, and it's 9 in the morning, and you seeing people come in or whatever, and then it's like, oh, and you're saying this to yourself, oh God, Susie's here, thank goodness, she's amazing. That's so good to see her here. My day is going to be better because she's around. This is great. And then here comes so and so. Oh, she's an amazing person. That's great. And then crap, here he comes.
yeah,
He showed up today. This is going to be, and it's the
Yep.
whole place. You haven't even said a word, but you just,
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
ER in
feel
here.
people that sort of suck energy and suck your will to live. There was
what
real quick.
happened?
There was a thing. Southwest Airlines had a big poster above their HR desk down in Texas. And I don't know if it's still there or not, but it was huge, huge poster. And it says, Southwest Airlines, we don't hire people who suck. And I thought that was a brilliant thing. I thought it was funny as all get out. And then when we asked, they said, oh yeah, no, that's what we're actually saying. We don't want people who suck the energy from other people. We want people who are giving
That's
and
nice.
promoting and pushing that energy out there.
Yeah.
Might
Yeah,
need a little of that more.
They've been pretty loose over in a good way with people, very friendly.
Well, and I think too, I think what you see is that people will engage when they feel like they matter. And, when leaders treat them as if they matter, as if they care about them, then you begin to build trust and cooperation. Simon Sinek talks about this all the time. You start to build that relationship with people where then you can do constructive criticism. But if you don't do that first, and now all of a sudden you tell them everything that's wrong, what happens? The shield goes up.
Well, can I ask, Mike,
I'm not going to listen to that garbage, because they could care less about me anyhow.
can I ask you something, Mike?
Yeah.
Referring to what we've been talking about. So what happens if the leader of the band or the leader of the business, in this case, is the one that's the problem, is the one with the bad attitude? And you guys have consulted many big companies with big CEOs and big all that. So how do you deal with that when that affects everything from below it, everybody from below it,
Right.
which affects everybody's day and when they go home to their families and how they sleep at night? I mean, that guy or girl is so key to everybody else's happiness and obviously the company flourishing. How do you deal with that if it's at the top?
Well, from my perspective, and Randy, you can jump in here too. I mean, from my perspective, I think first off, you have to find out, is there even a chance that you can get them to understand that? Because in some cases, no matter what you say, no matter what you do as a coach and consultant, if they're not at least going to open up a crack to let you in to say, all right, you got to start thinking about these things. Now, one of the ways that you can do that is you can begin to show them, if they'll allow you to give feedback, and not only feedback from me as the coach, but feedback from others around them. And sometimes I go right to so I don't really care about work environment. I go right to their spouse, or I go right to their closest friends and say, I want you I've just got a quick, survey thing that I want you to fill out, and I want you to tell me about this person. Because if you can go and get them to understand that these are people that are in your circle that care about you,
like a 360,
then you might be able to begin to start breaking things down. But I think, if there's not and one of the things about it is if they have taken the time and spent the money to bring me in, I have to think that there's hope.
Right.
I have to think that there's an opportunity there. I just have to find out how to get to that opportunity.
The academic work tells us that there is a fairly large group of people. I'm going to say a third, but probably a little less than that. And gender doesn't matter. Men and women line up the same way here, where they believe that they've communicated successfully when they have a thought and that comes out of their mouth. That's what communication is. Have a thought, blah, blah. And they call these people expressives. And expressives are just that. They're just going to say it. And these are people that will say the meanest things, like, oh, I hate your hair. What'd you do to your hair? They'll just kind of come out with those sort of statements. You're like, and that's usually a signal. This person is expressive. They're not doing any thinking about what they're going to say beforehand, or they're not concerned about how the other person is going to deal with this. The good news about expressive people is they're actually pretty good leaders. They actually test well as leaders if a couple of other things are in place, because what employees report is, I always know where I stand as it relates to Azar, right? Azar is going to always tell, if Azar is upset with me, I'll know it. If Azar is happy with me, I'm going to know it, because he's just blah. So expressiveness in and of itself is not a bad thing. But not all of us are expressive. And sometimes those people come across like a bull in a china shop. And so if the person is legitimately just expressive, then what I have them do is say, you know what? Share the motive for why you're saying something sucks. I think that sucks because if we don't do this, then the customer is going to have this and that's going to suck. Okay, now I have some sense of context. I have some sense of background. So I call that open motive. Tell me why you're saying what you're saying at the very least, and don't just come out with these pronouncements, but these people they're not afraid of conflict. They're used to conflict. Conflict happens every day. They'll just say and do terrible things, and you're like, oh my gosh, you're a terrible person. But there's a good chance maybe they're not. But they also could be a terrible person. Here's the other thing: you could be a terrible person in any of the communication styles. So
Right.
Hey, do they do like, I know Gallup is a big survey short form that evaluates you and everything about an individual, which I've done that test before. But let me ask you guys something. When you go in, do you ask them to sort of give them a survey about their employees and give the employees a survey about their leader? Do you do that so
that's
you
a 360.
Yeah,
Yeah,
is
it's
that
a
the
360.
you're talking about? Well, you get to go in and know what they feel about the CEO.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
But
good. I mean,
but one of the things that I start with, and that's certainly part of the process, but one of the things that I start with, the tool that you're referring to, Steve, is called Clifton Strengths Finder, and that one's been around since the mid to late 90s, I think, and I've used that extensively. But the other one that I really like, that I think really gets to the core of who they are, is one called the Values in Action Inventory,
Yeah,
and
really
that
good.
one measures their character.
Right.
It identifies what their
Scary
character
how
strengths are.
accurate it is too.
Yeah, and that one came out of the positive psychology world. Dr. Martin Seligman and Chris Peterson created that tool, and it's a fascinating tool from a leadership perspective because you can really kind of see what are the key things that individual holds true from a values perspective.
Mhm.
And are they exercising those values in balance? Because we all know that we can do too much or we can do too little. Humor is my number one character strength. Well, if I make fun of everything, then I'm not using it in balance. If I take everything too seriously, I'm not using it in balance there either.
Hmm.
So understanding that and I think that's the one thing that we miss a lot in leadership today is the whole idea of virtue and character. Going back to foundational stuff all the way back to the ancient Greeks, really understanding what are the virtues of successful leaders. Alexander Havard wrote a book called Virtuous Leadership, and he talks about humility and magnanimity are the two most important virtues for any leader. Obviously
Preach.
being humble, magnanimity, I love that word. It's one of my favorites. I'll get that one for next year, guys.
Come on.
That one is seeing the greatness in others.
That's right.
And that's what's so amazing about that one is do you see the greatness in your people? And I think if you're exercising those things and of course we've got to throw in the rule of Benedict here because I'm the monk guy. And the rule of Benedict 1500 years ago, the longest chapter in the rule of Benedict is on humility. It's chapter 7, and he talks about the 12 steps of humility. So again, it's those aspects that really make leaders great.
I love it. I love it. And there's so much to like about that. First of all, that inventory you were talking about, the values inventory is terrific. I think it's still available online and I think you can
Yeah.
actually do it
Yeah,
for
it's free. Yeah, it's
free.
free. Yep. Yep.
And it is a very, very eye-opening. Do that with your spouse and see how it'll open up some interesting
Absolutely. Yeah.
conversations
Yep.
for sure. But Azar, one of the things that really switched me on about you, I found you first as a musician and an artist, and I love the music. And I think I told you at some point that the Indian Old album is just one that I have will play through as an album on a regular basis. In fact, just did this past weekend on our deck. And the person that
Nice.
we were serving
Nice.
dinner to was like, "Who is this? Who is this?" And a terrific album, a terrific. The thing that really switched me on about you though was when one of the first things that you started talking to me about were the other artists, young artists that you were working with. And I think even in Astoria, Oregon, there was a young woman there who opened for you or something that was singing. And so it was like, oh, well, here's who she is. And here's why I'm paying attention to her. And here's what we're going to, And it was just like, okay, you're that guy. You're the guy who's going to be out there, not just doing your own career, but you're looking out for those young musicians who are coming up. And my sensibility about you jumped up about tenfold
Wow.
because
Oh,
of that.
why is that?
Because you were thinking about somebody besides yourself and what was good for your career, even though you had every reason in the world to just be focused on you, because that's why we were all there, was to focus on you. But you didn't. You kept that open. And this, even the way you talked about your family, when I got to meet your family at that time, it was just like, oh, this guy is not like the cutout of a big music star.
You know what's interesting? Looking back at I always think about the Wonder Years, when I do my In a Mississippi Minute radio show and podcast, I always ask, I want to know about the Wonder Years, because I feel like there's a nurturing moment, and more than a moment, years, where it really impacts how you do things later in life. My job in the summer for my 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year, I taught tennis for the Park Commission, and I love teaching. I love being on that side of it. And then I taught guitar lessons as a kid, and into my, before I, for a while I did it, while I could, but and then of course my band was playing, but that was obviously a great time and all that, but I love teaching. And then as I saw artists, and when I really felt like I could give a shortcut and I could save people at least 10 years, because I know every mistake that I made along the way. And some of those mistakes you want, because they help you to become a better songwriter and artist and person. You get to understand life, and you need that hurt and all that stuff, experiences to write great songs. But a lot of it is just false hope junk, and you need to be able to eliminate it. And when you eliminate that, you eliminate a lot of years of wasted time, because I wasted that time. So I figured out, it's something as simple as, you can't be the artist in the room that they want you to be what they are. Well, you sit there and try to be what they are, sing the way they sing, phrase the way they phrase, make the music the way they music, because they're so successful. But it never worked for me. It never felt honest. And it wasn't going to convince anybody that it was the right thing. So I spent so many years trying to just listen to them, because I felt like they were successful. They knew what they were doing. Where they were wrong was they were driving rather than letting me drive. And as I say, that person needs to be riding shotgun or in the back seat, right? Depends on how much knowledge they have and how much they're into you as an artist. So, and then teaching songwriting, I was with the best, arguably. And there's pockets of the best, but my guys were amazing. And so even though they weren't teaching me, I felt like that could have been a little bit more understandable the way I teach. It's everything they taught me, because I figured out eventually the recipe of what really they meant. And they were never clear to me, or I was just too dumb to understand it, or not prepared yet mentally to understand it.
Right.
Had other things on my mind and wasn't listening, which could be the case. But I really figured out how the shortcut for learning how to write songs, learning how to be honest, learning how to make your music. And those are the things that,
and so how many people listening to this right now feel like they're at a point in their career where they've figured some things out, and maybe this is an invitation for them to go ahead and pick up the phone and say, hey, I've been seeing you struggle with some things. Let's have a conversation. I think I can help you through.
Well, I had a lot of people knocking on the door when I first moved to town, and it was too many people, and it was literally knocking on the door or calling. And I always felt bad. I felt like I wanted to talk to them. So Gwen kept going, you're spending a lot of time now giving advice. You need to open a consulting company, because you need to find out who the serious ones are. And that's when we came up with this, a good friend of ours, Sam Swan at the time, was a big consultant like you guys. And she turned me on to Gallup, and she helped me create this you have to fill this thing out. And you're going to quit filling this thing out if you're not serious. Right. And I got to work with a lot of serious artists. There was one girl that I worked with. I got to tell you, she didn't know how to sing. She had a bunch of poems, and she goes, I want to turn these into songs. Well, she kept humming or whistling. And I go, you know what? Your melodies are there. And she goes, yeah, but I said, no, that's it. Because you sing it like you say it. You're singing it like you whistle it, or sing it like you hum it. And I'll be dog if we didn't figure out that we ended up with a bunch of songs that she turned poems into songs. She was really fast. And then so quick study. And she was a writer, she was a successful writer for periodicals, magazines, newspapers, and all that. And we end up figuring out, why don't we get artists in Arkansas, which is where she was from, to sing all your songs. And she did that, and she won the Arkansas Album of the Year against incredible talent that's even in Nashville. And I was going, like, how did she win Arkansas the best album of the year at the Arkansas Music Awards, which is a really hard, I'm telling y'all, it's legit. And I'm going like, you got to be kidding me. But I was even shocked. But then when I listened to the record and everything, I was like, well, I get it. But she came a long way, but she was prepared and listening. And
There you go.
probably my most greatest pride moment, because I was going like, this is crazy.
That's
So many
huge.
stories. Even one guy that kept going to Nashville, he's the sweetest guy in the world. And he'd go to all these training sessions and mentor sessions. And finally he came to me and I said, what are your goals? And which I always asked. He goes, I want to be able to say I played in some music songwriting festivals. I want to be able to da 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 da. And now not only is he playing in those festivals, he's a judge in one in Dallas. And so he's come so far and he's so happy. And their attitude was so great that it just opened the door for them to flourish. And no matter what the talent level is or whatever, it was interesting to see that they could all step it up. And it makes you proud, but I just enjoy it.
Well, and it's interesting tue. I mean, when, Randy, you make the comment, well, maybe there's other folks in this position, and pick up the phone. And I talk about it in strategy sessions with clients. I talk about the idea of a higher purpose vision.
Yes.
We've got goals, we've got metrics that we want to hit, we've got things that we want our businesses to do. But I can tell you that the minute a business or an organization commits to what I call a higher purpose vision, which means it has nothing to do with the money, it has nothing to do with prestige, it has nothing to do with the success of the business. It has everything to do with something more than the leader themselves or the business itself. Then you begin to see exponential growth, because now they're focused on something that has nothing to do with the success of the company. They're focused on doing something else good, whatever that is, whether that's mentoring new artists, whether it's, Steve, you didn't do it for the money. You did it because you love doing it. Yeah, right. And I think that's the thing about it, that higher purpose vision to say, I want to leave a legacy. I want to help this cause, whatever it is. I think when you begin to look at that from an organizational standpoint, then you move to the next level. And there's all kinds of research out there that justifies that thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. So with artists like Drew Pulliam, who's out now, and if people are listening, they got to go listen to him. Second album, met him when he was 16 years old. He's just turning 20, been working together. This kid works at his craft like crazy, lives in Nashville now. And I know after this album, chances are he's going to get picked up by a label that's not my label. And I know all the work I put in with him, but I know I have to let him go.
Wow.
So those are the sad moments. And you're thinking like, everybody's going like, in Nashville, a lot of my friends are going like, you got him there. And I said, you know what? I think he got himself there. And second of all, and he deserves to move on, especially when I'm so busy and I can only give him so much of their time. I'd love for him to call me and go, hey, I'd like you to produce this third album on this label, because I want them, mine is sort of a building block. You're building your career on my label, and then hopefully we can launch you to a place that can get you where you need to go, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Especially when you work with new artists, not a guy that like me that had hits and went backwards sort of and started to be able to focus on my own career. These are people coming from zero, and then you have to push them up, and I can only push them up so far. So, and I know that that's the reality. Tyler Tisdale, another act. So people are going to have to leave, and they get frustrated a little bit during the process because they get excited like I used to. And I remember that, and they want everything to come to them right away. But guys,
Yeah.
our business is simple now. They want to break you on TikTok, or they want to find you that you broke on TikTok or Instagram or whatever it is now. And they don't want to do any of the work. They want you to be broken, or they will break you on TikTok. Then they'll know if they can go chase radio and spend the money and all this. They're hedging their bet every which way now because the streaming has allowed for less money. Now they get a piece of every part of you now, where they didn't used to get a part of your live gigs. Now they do. They did get some of your publishing. When you wrote your entire record, they'd take like 10 or 15% just to do it. It's funny. they wouldn't take any of that if you didn't write any of the songs. So they just knew that was an avenue for them to take it. But with all that said, the bottom line is, get back to the point, is at some point you got to set them free. And you got to
Yep.
they're ready,
Yep.
and that
Yep.
they appreciate what the time you spent with them.
Yep.
So
All right.
well, from
Randy, you want to bring us home? I think we're at about the time here.
all of this comes from just this: can you stop and listen? Can you put your phone down? Can you be switched on and look around? Head on a swivel. It's a safety thing as much as anything else. And then can you bring that into your company, into the business work that you're doing? Can you listen first and connect more directly and more relevantly? And then finally, it's going to influence your family and the way you live your life at its most important moments. And Mike, I'm talking about the humility, chapter 7. We all need to go check it out, because I think that's ultimately the foundation of it. But I think the big thing that this show is hinting at is that it's easy to see how quickly things can get onto a wobble simply because one person walks in the room and they're not going to try and participate in dialogue with the rest of the group. So this is a very fragile world that we live in, and be switched on to the communication potential that's there. And buy Indianola. Go listen to that album if you haven't already.
Absolutely.
Fantastic album. Anyway.
Oh, and by the way,
delight.
Steve, I taught tennis the summer after my senior year.
Wow, you're gonna lie, man. Did you
How
love
about
it?
that?
Did you love
I
it?
loved it. I loved it. That's why I still teach today.
You know what the bad thing about teaching is, you become not as so good of a player. You lose your skills. You really
That's
do.
true.
So you spend more time doing that, and I started to lose my backhand and things like that because I had so many balls here, and I was just, But
That's why you don't see very many tour players on the PGA Tour that are great teachers. They
No,
bring
they're
teachers
not.
in.
Isn't that interesting? That's another whole conversation. Our
Right.
teacher
We'll get onto that one another day. All
loved
right,
it.
guys. Well, let's wrap it up. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to check us out at resonanceleader.com. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms, Apple Music, Amazon Music, Spotify, all of those good places. If you go to resonanceleader.com, all the buttons are there. You can just click on it and listen to whichever one. And don't forget to give us a thumbs up and follow us and subscribe to us and all those kinds of fun things. If you want to watch the video version, we've got a YouTube channel. It's called Resonance the Podcast. So check us out there. And guys, we'll see you next time.
Later on.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Steve.
Thanks,
Peace.
guys.
Thanks for listening to Resonance. Find us at resonanceleader.com.